Hello and welcome to the No Hesitations podcast. We are your co-hosts.
Kristen Marvin with Solutions by Kristen.
And Nick Spinelli. That's me.
We talk about all things leadership, successes, challenges, and every topic in between with the goal of helping you become a better leader.
So join the conversation each week wherever you find your podcasts because there's no time like the present to listen in and level up. Kristen, who have we got this week?
We have TJ McReynolds joining us. Thank you for being here, TJ. Super excited to chat with you today and learn more of your story. TJ and I have known each other for, I was trying to think about it the other day. Has it been 7+ years?
We met, Kristen, from my recollection. I think we met in like 2012.
Oh, okay. Long time.
Yeah.
It's a little more than
Feels like a
7,
long
Kristen.
time. Yeah. Anyone that knows me knows I'm really bad with time. Tyler gives me a really hard time about it. For me, everything happened 2 weeks ago, even if it's 2 years ago, and I always get defensive and say the time frame doesn't matter. It's just
So you've only been here in Tucson for like 2 weeks is what I'm hearing, like maybe 3 at the most.
Yeah,
okay.
That's an easier timeline for me to realize or to remember. But anywho, TJ has been in the restaurant business for some time, and we're going to talk about that. He's going to share a little bit more about his story, but he and I worked for the same operator, but in different times in our career. And when I was first becoming a regional manager, I was with Snooze, and I looked around and I thought to myself, I've never done this before. I've never been a regional manager. How am I going to do this? I want to surround myself with a community of regional managers in the area. And I asked one of our founders, I said, do you know any regionals in the area that you can connect me with, or anyone that I can learn from? And we put our heads together for a few minutes. We went down a list of restaurants. We were like, no. So I started kind of searching, and poof, TJ appeared, and we have bonded over the years for our love for and passion for hospitality, and some great mentors, which he'll talk about in a little bit. But to give you a little background on TJ is driven by the opportunity to create meaningful and impactful relationships through community, sustainability, and education. He is a converted lifelong restaurant hospitality professional and currently acting as a principal customer success manager for SafetyCulture. And he's going to talk a little bit more about what SafetyCulture does here in a little bit. With 10+ years of experience specializing in restaurant operations, team management, service and hospitality, food safety, coaching and development, and financial strategy, TJ is confident in his ability to excel in the technology and customer success industry. He excels when challenged and embraces any opportunity to continue his growth and development. TJ has 3 kids and an amazing partner at home, and does his best to enjoy the adventure that is life. TJ, for I know you can't see him right now, any of you that are listening, but he's just like a very happy-go-lucky guy, and he's got this huge smile on his face right now. TJ, what's going on with you right now as I read all those things?
It's difficult to just hear things about yourself. Yeah, and I mean, I wrote that bio, so it's still just hard to hear somebody say it out loud, you know.
Totally.
But it's hard not to smile when you hear stuff like that.
Well, I was thinking about this morning too. You know, this is a moment, and this is one of the things I love about this podcast, is this is a moment to celebrate you and all the things that you've done in your leadership. And a lot of us leaders don't get that moment, right? We don't have a moment to just sit here and go, let's just take a bird's eye view of all the things that we've done and really give you a shout out. So congratulations. This is awesome.
I absolutely appreciate it and couldn't agree with you more. I think often as leaders, we focus on celebrating the folks around us rather than ourselves. It's just kind of in us. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Nick, I don't know about you, but for me, when somebody pays me a compliment, I'm like, okay, thanks. It's really uncomfortable. And I move on as quickly as I possibly can. Nick, how are you feeling about that?
Oh God, I mean, if you wanted me to give the honest answer from years of therapy, that would probably have a lot to do with my upbringing. But yes, on a purely human level, of course, when someone says something nice about you, my reaction is always to deflect, evade. No, it's all you, like whatever. Um, TJ, yeah, we're excited to celebrate you a little bit today. And I already have a question formulating about who else in your life you feel. I want to ask you about who else you feel is really celebrating that transition with you, or was cheering you on while you were doing it. But maybe we put a pin in that and come back to that later because I'm sure we'll get there.
It's a great question. And I'll definitely think about it a little bit. There's quite a few, Kristen being one of them, I feel like. So
Cool.
yeah.
See, I'm just immediately uncomfortable on my own podcast. I'm uncomfortable. So anyway, well, I really would love to dive in, and hear a little bit of your background and how you got to safety culture, and then dive into, this moment when you talked about in your bio, or you wrote down embracing any opportunity to continue your growth and development. Would really love to understand how that's tied into, where you're at now in your career.
Absolutely. Quite a story, but I think from what I've found, it is somewhat common in the restaurant world, and especially when you start to think about the folks that last in the restaurant world, the story always somewhat sounds the same. But my dad had his own restaurant when I was a kid. And some of the earliest memories I have are in a kitchen with him, and him showing us around and just kind of having us there. And the excitement of creating an experience and cooking. And it just kind of stuck with me. And he was really adamant that I do not follow in his footsteps. He has 4 sons, and he was very clear with all of us, like, this is not for the faint of heart. I would not recommend it. But it just kind of always was there for me. I always cared about it. And it was my first job through very recently. It was the only thing I knew. It was the only thing I ever tried, really. And I think there's this piece, and it's there's kind of a couple pieces to it. But in the restaurant world, it tends to be a stepping stone for a lot of folks. It tends to be a temporary job to make some money while they work towards something else. And so I think good leaders in restaurants will quickly recognize the people that want to be there and want to move up, and they'll grab onto them and really foster it. And so I learned really early on that was a necessary part of growing a good restaurant business and hospitality business, because I had some good leaders that saw me and recognized me and really started to foster what was special about what we were doing. So I, through some luck and grit and hard work, made my way through the restaurant world, every position, and found myself with an opportunity to be a GM at the age of 23. This was after kind of doing the Vail, Colorado thing and snowboarding a lot, and learning what real fine dining was, and getting to be around some really talented chefs, and learning who Danny Meyer was, and kind of starting to really buy into the restaurant world. Once I'd made the leap into management, is when it really started to make sense. I think you learn a lot, and you learn a lot of good, you learn a lot of bad. It's a necessary piece of that journey in hospitality, I think. And throughout the whole thing, there's always this sense of it's hard to commit to. It's hard. The restaurant world is something where you always feel like, am I crazy? it's
right.
Am I crazy to be doing this? But the second that I committed, the second that I said, this is for me, is when things really changed. And I really bought in. The time spent, the hours and hours of stress on your feet and putting out fires and managing people, the challenges just kind of made sense to me, and because I was committed to it. So I really dedicated to myself to growth and started investing a lot of time in leadership and understanding how to manage people. I loved the hospitality side. I realized pretty early on that what kept my glass full was taking care of people, whether that was my staff or the guest walking in the door. And that's really what I bled. And I think the teams that I led kind of bought into that. I would sit here and tell you, I think my weaknesses were never really the ins and outs of running a business. It was just taking care of people. I figured out quickly, if I could have my guests walk out the door with a smile on their face, I'm winning. I'll figure the rest out. So dedicated a life to just pulling out chairs and saying hi to people and being genuine and being empathetic, and owning mistakes. And it took me to the top of something. By the time I met you, Kristen, I was working my way towards being a little bit of a partner with that team, and having some ownership in a couple of our businesses, and felt really great and bought in. Met the Snooze folks. They are incredible people, and you alone fostered an opportunity for me to join that team in Kansas City when I relocated with my family back home, and got to learn so much from that team. And I think between COVID and kids, having my own kids, I found myself, and then finally an opportunity presented itself for me to really step out of the restaurant world. And it came at a time when I really wanted to consider it and make a change. I still to this day question the decision, because I missed so much about the restaurant world, but I truly believe that what I gained and learned, and bled for so many years, has given me the ability to succeed in no matter what I do. And I just want to focus on growing. And I may find myself back in a restaurant someday, but here I am sitting in front of a computer most days. I still get to work with a lot of great people, which is the important part to me, and it still keeps my glass full.
That's awesome. You mentioned something that's really important, that you didn't really lean into the restaurant industry being a career until you really committed, and you were telling yourself, like, I don't know if this is a career. I mean, society tells us that, right? Like, oh, the restaurant business is just a stepping stone. It's not something that you want to be involved in. It's not sustainable. It's too physical. So I think, I agree with you. I had that moment too, where I was a GM at 24, and I just said, I love everything about this. I love how every single day is different. I love that you can make little tiny moments and steps towards making a guest happy every single day. And like you said, just make their day, whether it was at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, you were celebrating something, you were cheering them up, you were just simply making a connection with someone that you knew was going to be a regular for years and years and years. That's like, it's like crack. It's like, it's very addictive. I was like, how do I describe this? It's very addictive. I'm curious about, you were on your you were on your path to ownership, and then you pivoted. And one of the things that I talk to clients a lot, and I've heard from restaurant owners in the industry over the years, is one of the biggest challenges is how to keep your general managers engaged and your regional managers engaged. If they want to stay in operations, that's one thing, but a lot of them don't. They're looking for growth. And ownership is kind of the natural next step, right? So you were being positioned for that. You were working towards that. Why the pivot?
The relocation was a big piece of it. We knew my family is all Kansas City based. My wife's family is all Kansas City based. So we knew inevitably we would end up back here. So I was having conversations with that group early on, being pretty real with them. And like the great owners they are, they offered to search Kansas City to start a restaurant group in KC with me. So I can't necessarily fully lean on a relocation as an excuse, but at that time in my life, I think I was ready to kind of cut my teeth on my own a little bit and kind of figure out my own path. See what else is out there. I think what you're kind of speaking to earlier, the restaurant world is incredibly hard, which I think is where folks struggle to commit. It's like, why would I commit to something so difficult? And that I wanted to see the other side of it, and make sure that the difficulty that I was committing to was worth it.
And how does the other side look?
It it's got its perks. I don't work weekends. I don't work holidays. The hours are great. I've got great benefits. I mean, there's a lot of perks to it. But man, do I still find myself missing the dynamic life of a restaurant tour. I miss so much of it every day. So I can't sit here and tell you I know the answer to that. I don't think there is a right answer, but I'm just going to enjoy the journey. I'm so one of the things I'm committed to is just continuing to grow, and wherever that leads me, if that leads me back into the restaurant world, so be it. We'll see what happens.
Nick, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in here with your questions. I know you've got some.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about this journey, right? Let's actually just get real nuts and bolts for a moment. So when we're talking about safety culture, explain this to me like someone who's never heard of them, because I've actually never heard of them. Yes, I read them in your bio, and I wanted to hear it in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. So SafetyCulture is an industry agnostic software. We've worked ourselves into being an operations platform, but we really started with digital inspection. So Kristen and I know it from Snooze. It was a software that we used there. We did it 3 times a day, every 3 hours, to check food safety, food quality, cleanliness, employee activity, really just making sure that the operation was there, and it allowed us to create habits to see things. It pulled the team that was running these inspections out of the operation for 30 minutes to take a look and make sure things were going well. That's the easy side of it, is just putting a mobile first digital inspections tool in the hands of your front line. And what we recognized pretty quickly is that the data mattered. Like, all that stuff that they're seeing and putting into this iPad is great intel to the leadership team and administrative team in the office. A lot of who I work with today is not only restaurants, but construction, manufacturing, retail, almost every industry you can imagine. And what we see and hear very, very often is the disconnect between the office and the field. So what our tool really does is gives the field a straight line of communication to the office. Here's what's happening. Here's what we need to do. And then the office, if they're onto it, can help. Hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's the changes we can make. So we've kind of developed the tool from there. It can be a food safety tool, which is what we were using it for at Snooze. It can be a HSE software for construction and manufacturing. I work with a lot of quality teams in food manufacturing. So, I mean, I think if it's incredibly hard to explain, but it is one of the most motivating things I've ever done, because I get to work with a lot of folks who really get a ton of value from our software, because we're more or less, in some instances, saving lives. We're keeping people safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, from a interdisciplinary or even transdisciplinary standpoint, I think it would be very interesting. You're touching all these different economic sectors and fields, right? And so you have this like connective tissue between all of them, and really what it seems to me to be about is gathering that data and then making informed decisions. I'm wondering, when you were originally using this working for Snooze, at what point did you actually start to see yourself on the other side of that curtain and say, hey, maybe I could actually be the one helping to run this thing, you know?
It's a great question. For me, they asked me to.
That would help.
I got incredibly lucky. My move back home landed me in Kansas City, where the SafetyCulture America's office is located. So every day I would be in my restaurant doing my inspections. And when I ran into an issue, SafetyCulture's got a great support network of, whether it's me needing help with something that's happening with the app, or we used these Bluetooth thermometers that would sync with the software. And if I needed help with anything like that, the team would help me out. And I quickly realized they were local. And when they realized I was here, they latched on to me. They would come to the restaurant. They'd give me all the new and shiny features. They'd give me new hardware to test out. They they filmed me in a case study. There's all this stuff that they just started investing time in me. And I got to meet a lot of the leadership team. And we were in the heart of COVID. And eventually the GM walked over to me one day and just out of the side of his mouth was like, "Hey, if you're ever looking for a change, we'd love to talk to you." And I was open to at least discussing a change. So here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So from a restaurant standpoint, I think I already know the answer to this, but I just want to hear you say it out loud. Pre-safety culture, before you were using tools like this, I guess this is a question for both of you. I would imagine inspections looked very different for both of you, and it was all contextual, right? But at the same time, how much of a game changer was this? Because it sounds like this made your lives a lot easier. I would like to hear about what it was like before you had this tool in your lives.
You sound like me, Nick. And Kristen, I am so interested to hear your answer. I'll let you.
You want me to go? Nick, it was a lot of crayon and pencil and paper and notebooks in the office. And sometimes the inspections got done and sometimes the inspections didn't get done. It was a very common excuse, that we were too busy. The line was, the ticket times were too long. We didn't have enough staff. It was very easy amongst the management team in that restaurant to rally together and say, you know what, this isn't important to us right now. And the more systems and tools that you put in place as a company, the more accountability there is around it. And it really helps. I think the investment that we made really helped the teams understand why we were doing this, what the importance was, the importance of taking care of the guests, not only the guests, but them as well, right? Restaurant teams eat in their restaurant every single day, multiple times a day, if they, can. And so it was just an extra layer of accountability and discipline and importance and pride in elevating the standards overall, that we wanted to be the best. We wanted to protect the people, but also protect the business. It was a very responsible thing to do. And I would say 90% of people understood that. And the ones that didn't agree with other things that we were doing and probably weren't, a cultural fit for us. That's my 2 cents. What about you, TJ?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's so spot on. So what's really great about a software like SafetyCulture is it truly can impact culture, which Kristen is hitting on the nose. For me, I think the biggest thing I saw come into Snooze was a shift in understanding and knowledge around food safety. Food safety in the restaurant business, I mean, I would compare it to like OSHA in construction. It's like this thing that we know is there, but it's easy to avoid until it's right in your face and an inspector walks in the door. So you've got these checks and balances in place to run your fire drill when they do, so that you can fake it. Not that you're faking the whole thing, because it is very important to any good business to keep your folks safe. And food safety is a necessary part of the restaurant world. So of course we have equipment that can do it for us, and it's our job to monitor it and make sure that we're actually following the procedures. Mm-hmm. There's this mentality in most restaurants where when we see the health inspector, we freak out, we make things look better than they are, and you get through it. And the best operators know how to fake it so that you look great. Not that Snooze was not doing this, but what we did have was a tool and a software that made me and my staff the most educated that I had ever experienced around food safety. It was a part of our training. We did it 3 times a day. We also hired third-party auditors to come in and test us on it. So it really mattered to me because it really mattered to Kristen and it really mattered to our owners. And I was proud of it. I welcomed the health inspector because of this thing. Like, they walked in the door and I was like, "Hey man, what do you want to look at?" Like, we had set up the audit so that it was there for me to lean on if I needed to from a temperature standpoint. I was the most comfortable I had ever been, and I was proud of it. So I think the food safety side, in particular for me, was the biggest adjustment with a tool like this.
Yeah. And TJ, you make a really good point, and you're bringing back a little trauma for me around the health department, health inspectors. Our goal was to not scramble and not have everybody be walking on eggshells when the health inspector walked in. It was, how do we set up consistent systems so that this is just how we're operating all the time, and we feel confident when when the health inspector walks in the door. I think the kitchens and the restaurants that embrace that inspector coming in and they treat them like a guest and they're hospitable to that person and they partner with them and they ask questions and they build strong relationships and they're empathetic to what that person does, are a lot more successful than the ones that I've also worked with that scream at them and have made them cry and chase them out of the restaurants when they come in to do their job. Which, when you think about that, it's like, which person would you rather work for, right? The hospitality wins every single time.
That's just abusive. That isn't helping anybody.
What does that say about your culture, right?
Right. I think that's a really interesting point, what you were both just describing about not only how it changes the workplace culture, but potentially how that was even a game-changing tool for you as managers of people, right? You're trying to set your staff up for success, and I would imagine that opened a lot of doors for you. And maybe in another time and space, we can talk about compliance and higher education and what it would look like if we had this sort of real-time tool to check in with that as we're designing curriculum and student experiences, because it's very similar. You're talking about the health inspector, right? The Higher Learning Commission or whoever your accrediting body is, they come in every 5 to 10 years. And granted, you have plenty of notice when that visit is coming up because you have to pull, hundreds, sometimes thousands of pages of documentation, right? To basically show them where your curriculum is, how much it's drifted or changed since the last time they visited. And even still, in my short time spent in that space, you can't even imagine the panic when a representative does show up or does request information, because if you're not organized and you don't have all that data on hand, that could be a really uncomfortable conversation for you as the institution, right? So I would imagine that this has done a lot to improve your processes and procedures, which is amazing. TJ, tell me about a typical day for you in the saddle at your new job, if there is a such thing as a typical day. I'd be curious, is it mostly meetings? Is it analytics? Are you looking at data and spreadsheets? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. You hit on a lot of it. Customer meetings, I'd say, are the bulk. And that we have some good freedom to manage our time as we need. My role, customer success manager, is I work with the top, the biggest and biggest spend customers, and offer them support. So, I really approach it as almost like a consultant type mentality. Like, let's really dig in on your processes and think through it and leverage this software as best we can to make improvements. So a lot of my time is with them. Outside of that, the culture in my office specifically is pretty time consuming, and in a good way. We do a lot of socializing. The office is an open concept. So we do a lot of collaboration, and just kind of the company meetings that are necessary to what we do. So that I'd say number 2 is putting in time there. And then I'd say the other big piece is just kind of sitting down and doing admin. There's a lot that goes into just managing. My position is based off of customer retention. So there's this moment in this, specifically the SaaS software industry as a service, or renewal-based software, which everything is turning into, where they realized retaining a customer is hard work. And if we can figure out how to do it, if we can make sure they continue to pay us year over year, we're going to win. So they dedicated a department to that, and that's the department I live in. And there's a lot that goes into analyzing data around that, understanding what pieces of the software are being used the most versus they aren't, and feature development, and partnering with our software development team to help them understand what customers need and are saying. There's a lot that just goes into the foundation of keeping customers using us.
Yeah, and we've talked so much about how your hospitality background has just really helped you thrive in this new role, and your commitment and dedication to taking care of every single customer that you have or guest that you have, whether it's in front of you or in Australia or wherever they are, right? Just all over the place. So I think it's really played a huge part in your success, which is incredible.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, it gives me confidence. I sat down with a group of my coworkers, and one of them asked, and we had all started around the same time. And so we just hit our 2-year anniversary with SafetyCulture. And one of them asked, did you guys feel imposter syndrome ever? And I like pretty quickly was like, no, and I think it was just because I came in confident. I was like, I don't know anything about what this role is going to be other than I did a lot of research, of course, but I still know I can do it because exactly what you're talking about. Like I and just being able to invest and put myself in a position to succeed, that because I've been doing it my entire life, and in the restaurant world, it's hard, so I was just came in with confidence.
Totally. I'd love to talk a little bit about your transition from operations to SafetyCulture. There's a lot of clients that I talk to that questioning if it's time to get out of operations. There's a natural transition for people to go from operations to, a POS software company, stay connected with the industry because they love it, they know it. But I've worked with a couple people in preparing them for how do you go from being on your feet from 8 to 10 hours a day to all of a sudden sitting in front of a computer and working from home, and your complete environment changing. How was that transition for you, and what things did you do to prepare for that, and what things surprised you?
Yeah. I'd say shocking was a theme for me. It definitely kind of shocked my system, and still to this day does. And that's, I think, a lot of when I say I miss the restaurant, I think that's a lot of what I miss is like just the excitement and the energy. So I it's hard to prepare for it. Having spent my entire life in it, I think I welcomed the change a little bit more readily. I was like, I just want to experience the quiet for a little bit. So I think that prepared me. I choose most days to go into the office. So there's still excitement and buzz that I get to have around me. It's less in the form of guests and more in the form of my coworkers. So I have to get creative with how I can go above and beyond with the people around me, which is kind of fun. It's a fun challenge. And I made sure I vetted the company. Like I saw the office ahead of time. I got really lucky with SafetyCulture. I think it's a bit of a unique instance where it's and software's kind of got this stereotype, and we fit it. There's a bar in the office, there's a ping pong table, there's pickleball, there's big screen televisions and bean bags, and people are young and exciting. It's just kind of got that thing, that excitement that can somewhat fill that need I have, So maybe just I guess my advice would be do some homework. Don't make that leap until you're sure that you're ready. It was a hard leap to make, and I still I did a lot to prepare myself for it.
How do you find that? You mentioned that you miss that connection with hospitality and the guests. How do you find that now?
A lot of it's through making time in my schedule to get creative with my coworkers. Like I'll leave space in my schedule to just walk around the office and talk, clean the kitchen. Like we have shared spaces that we're responsible for, and that like is my happy place. So just get upstairs and do some dishes. It's like, this is home. So and it's little things like that. It's the unnoticeable things that we're used to doing as a leader in those buildings that nobody recognizes, but makes the place tick. Just helping people out and cleaning and being nice and listening and collaborating. So I'll intentionally leave space in my schedule to do those things.
Mm-hmm. How's the mental transition been for you? In the restaurants, we're managing a million things a day, customers and guests coming through. You could see 500 to 1,000 people, right? Snooze was intense when it came to volume. How how have you been able to focus with safety culture and keep yourself stimulated in this new role?
Well, first and foremost, and I mean this with so much sincerity, is find yourself an incredible coach who can help you through that stuff. Because you were instrumental in that change for me, Kristen. I mean that with all my heart.
Thank you.
It's not easy. I think I count my blessings every day to have a sound head on my shoulders. I think I can typically manage some pretty hard situations because of what I faced every day in the restaurant world. You can think on your feet really quickly and well. I learned to do that. So so much of the mental conditioning I was able to do in the restaurants translated to my new life. It's different. Yes, it's different challenges. But a lot of it just similar enough that I was pretty comfortable.
What does growth and development look like for you now? How are you investing in yourself?
There's a sense of excitement around a new industry and like a new challenge. I truly kind of felt like I had reached near the top of the restaurant business. I knew there was so much more to learn and do, but like this new thing is exciting to me. So, I mean, just naturally, there's so many different ways to get uncomfortable and put myself in positions to learn. And I really do want to succeed at anything I do. So that is a challenge in itself. Is like, that takes so much behind the scenes of just expecting success. Like you have to put a lot of work into being good at what you do, so I've invested time to do so. But I mean, a lot of what you and I talk about every week, Kristen, is like, I don't have this path. I don't have this specific position or thing I'm focused on, which kind of makes it hard to know where to challenge myself. So it's a bit chaotic, I think. Like I just jump on any opportunity I see to put myself in a position to learn, and it can be overwhelming. I get all the time here, I'm too much of a yes man. Like they're like, you need to stop saying yes. But I've always kind of leaned on it. And that was some of the biggest feedback I'd get in the restaurant industry was, you need to stop. You do too much. You need to delegate some of this stuff out. But I kind of enjoy it,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what we do as restaurant leaders, right? We see something and we take care of it immediately. So that may never go away for you. Right. But I think you bring up something really important that I want to touch on is you're finding ways to get uncomfortable for yourself so that you can learn and grow. And that's where growth happens is the uncomfortability, right? I was this week listening to a Zoom call with a coach, Rich Littman, that I love, and I've probably talked to you both about, but he does this fun challenge he calls Outrageous October. And it's about doing something that makes you incredibly uncomfortable, like to the point where you feel like you want to throw up. Ask for something from your coworkers, from your partner, from your clients that you've never even asked before. He gave us this really funny challenge. He calls it the pizza walk. And he said, I want you to go into a mattress store and ask for a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese, right? Just something like absolutely ridiculous and fun. And I just, at first I was like, that's the most absurd thing ever. And then I thought, I really want to do that, just to put a smile on somebody else's face and have them laugh and look at me like, what are you, nuts? And then see what their response is. But once you start doing things like that, everything else around you seems really small, right? Everything just gets easier. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Perspective's everything. And I think 90% of uncomfortable is just you making it uncomfortable. Like I think putting yourself in positions to be uncomfortable just makes you realize, oh, this isn't that bad.
Yeah,
like
totally.
How much, I mean, just that nervousness and fear just gets in the way. The quicker we can realize it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Kind of unlock some life.
How is work-life balance for you these days?
Better than it's ever been. Promise you that. I'm the type that, like, I was somewhat alluding to it, but I invest a lot into my career. It's just kind of always been who I am. So it's strange to have so much time at home. And I still probably put in a little bit too much to work, but we just had our third kid, and it is more necessary than it's ever been for me to be at home. so it's really good. I'm in a position where I can I have some freedom. They allow it. We've got a hybrid schedule model, so I can work from home if I need to on certain days. They're really understanding about taking time off and mental health and just family and how important it is. So I'm around people who push for it, which is so much of it, right? So I'm in a really good spot.
Love that. Love that. Well, Nick, I think we can start to wrap up here unless you have more
I was
questions.
going to say, we teased a question for you very early on that I want to circle back to
That's
now,
right.
and I think it would make a good place to end. Who else has been cheering you on throughout not only this transition, but as you continue to grow and evolve your career? You mentioned Kristen, but I'd like to hear
Chris is on
about
the
who
list.
else.
Yeah. My wife, of course, and as she's just the best partner I could have ever asked for and is supportive no matter what direction I go. But she is my number one cheerleader, hands down. I lean on my dad a lot. He was a mentor for me, especially running up through the ranks of the restaurant business and him having been there and his story. And as I mentioned earlier, the one that was like, don't do it. So the opportunity made him, I think, sad a little bit because him and I could always connect on it, but he was also really supportive of it. So, and I think like my parents' approval is big, so it felt good to have his support. Those are the big ones that come to mind. There's some mentors within the restaurant business that's supported it. I had built up some strong relationships in snooze that I could lean on. And we had an amazing people director who's one of the best people I've ever worked for, truly. And supportive and just instrumental and making me feel comfortable. And there's this badge of honor in the restaurant world where you own the uncomfort. You're proud of how much you work and how much you've invested and how much you just struggle. I mean, all of us know it. If you've ever worked in the restaurant business, it's when you run in there and you say, I put in 100 hours last week, and you're proud of it. And that piece of me was really, it made it really hard to leave the restaurant business. It felt, I had to really get over the fact that it felt like I was giving up. And there are a few people in the snooze world that made it a lot easier because they were supportive.
Yeah, I love that. I will say I've had the pleasure of talking to some of your teammates over the years and managers that have worked with you. And former coworker, former snoozer, I was able to talk to a couple months ago, and everyone says the same thing, that they rave about you, they miss you like crazy, and you've made such a huge impact on their life. So you're paying it forward. You're doing what you love, and it shows, and you're making a huge impact. So
it means a lot.
Yeah.
That's all I can hope for.
Awesome. Well, we so appreciate having you here and sharing a little bit more about what makes you tick and how you found success. Any last pieces of advice for any managers out there that are 23 and becoming a GM or thinking about a career transition from ops into something else?
I mean, as kind of, I think there are probably two things I'd really lean on. Number one, be the best at what you're doing in that moment. Focus on the position you're in. Too many people get caught up in the position they want to be in, that they're not focusing on knocking it out of the park in the position they're in. Be the best at what you're doing in elite places. And number two, I think the relationship and people side is worth the time. And that if that makes you uncomfortable, make yourself uncomfortable. Invest the time you need to understand, and especially in leadership, what a true investment in the folks around you looks like, and it'll pay off.
That's great. Love it. TJ, if people want to connect with you, listeners want to connect, how can they find you? Where are you?
LinkedIn, absolutely. I have pulled myself off of social media, mainly just for mental health, but LinkedIn's a great place. You can absolutely reach me via email or phone at any time. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Whatever information you guys share out, it's completely fine with me. At the end of this, I love connecting with people, so would welcome a conversation.
Awesome. Well, TJ, thanks again. All the best to you and your family, and I know we'll be in touch very soon. So
yes, ma'am. A big thank you for you guys having me. Love.
Of course. Folks, you know what time it is. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. Please subscribe and listen each week wherever you find your podcast, and be sure to follow Kristen Marvin and Nick Spinelli on LinkedIn. And subscribe to the Solutions by Kristen's newsletter. Please leave us any questions, comments, or feedback. You can reach us at nohesitationspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much. We will talk to you next week.
see you later, everybody.